So your ribber carriage and your knit carriage don't knit at exactly the same tension. So what I'm looking for is I want to find what settings I need to use to make the tension on the ribber carriage match the tension on the knit carriage, because I'm going to be circular knitting to knit socks. So anyways, you can see I have both of my carriages set. I have this set to the one. My understanding from a YouTube video I saw that was done by Alex, I think his YouTube channel is the Sweater Factory, is that if you ever want to use the gadget that transfers your ribber stitches to your knit carriage, you do need to be on this setting. But there's 3 settings for this. I believe this one is for if you're doing multicolor knitting, and this one sets everything tight. So I could probably use that for my zigzag row and then just go back to this setting for the rest. Okay, and I have my main carriage is set to plain knit, and everything is set to my tightest possible tension because I'm going to do a zigzag row to start, right? Okay, so with that threaded, now something else, because this would be considered an every needle rib, I have my pitch set to half pitch. So just while the camera's focused, I'm just going to show you the difference. So if I set to P, I'm kind of trying to see if I have you. You can see that the needles are exactly opposite to each other, right? So if I knit like that, I'm going to have needles colliding, and that won't do. So we go to half pitch, and now you can see that the ribber needles come up exactly in between the main bed needles, and that's what we want when we're doing any sort of every needle ribbing. In circular knitting, it doesn't matter, because if you have everything set right, only one carriage is knitting at a time. And actually, I will intentionally, when I'm knitting a sock, I will change my settings so that my needles are exactly adjacent to each other, because that way I reduce the possibility of ladders on the ends where your knitting transitions from your main bed to your ribber bed. But anyways, for the moment, half pitch it is. Let's do this first zigzag row. I have 50 needles pulled out on each bed because I want a 40 stitch wide swatch, even though I can't find my green ruler, so I'm going to have to measure it the old-fashioned way. So if everything goes well, I get a zigzag. Okay, and oh, hate that sound. Okay, I'm gonna hang my cast on comb. Get that little wire started. Must have a bent tooth. Okay, and I'm going to hang 2 large barrel weights, 1 on each end. At least that's what I'm starting with. Oh, I wonder. I just dropped a weight. No, nothing in there is long enough for. I was hoping maybe I would find where I hid my green stitch gauge ruler from myself, but I did not. Okay, now I'm going up to tension 1. I don't want to stay quite so tight. And then I'm going to knit back across, and I'm going to have to refer to the manual for my settings because this is not the Singer, so I have not done this as much as on the Brother. Okay, so something I really kind of enjoy about the manual for this ribber is after they discuss all the parts and everything, we get into the way of knitting. It sounds so very zen. So I am looking for my settings. Okay, so to create what's called my selvage, these are my settings. So I push in the 1 part button, like it shows here, and I make sure to push it in straight or it will catch, because it sits on a piece of metal, the button, and that metal has shoulders on it that will catch if you don't push it in straight. And then I change that lever there. I'm going to take everything back to, so I moved that slide lever at the bottom back to the 1 position. I've changed this switch to the PR, and I've pushed in this part button, and everything else is as it shows in that diagram. Okay, so I'm guessing that on this pass, if we're going clockwise, it's only going to knit the ribber bed. And that's what we've done. We've knit the ribber bed, but not the knit bed. And this pass should knit the main bed. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to do 1 more, and then I'm putting everything back to plain knitting. I just want to knit a few rows of zigzag before I start with my circular knitting and my tension tests. Okay. So everything is knitting off very nicely. So normally when you're doing a gauge swatch, you would knit a few rows and then you put in your contrast yarn and yada yada yada. I'm just going to try changing from zigzag knit to regular knit and do my number of rows and then go from there. Okay, so I'm on 0s for my row count. I want to do 20 rows, but because I'm going to be doing it in circular knit, it is going to get 20 rows, the row counter has to read 40, because you get, for each row you have to make 2 carriage passes. Okay, so that's 40. And I need some contrast yarn. So on each side, I'm going to pull out needle 21, and I'm going to knit that contrast yarn through, and I'm just going to leave it there for a sec. Okay, so the same on this side. And actually, I will pull you back a bit so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, and I am also going to do that on the rubber bed. Because remember, I'm mostly wanting to compare the tension from bed to bed until I get a match. Okay. Now, I'm just going to push these down. Out of the way a little bit. Now I have a full cone of this blue yarn, so it's not like when you buy crochet sock yarn and you know each $9 ball of yarn knits a single sock and you're trying to get a pair, so you're conserving yarn. It's not quite like that, but I don't want to be unnecessarily wasteful either. So I am going to do so not as worried about, well, okay, never mind. Let's just do our next 40 rows. And I have experimented with this a little bit already, trying to find the right. So I kind of think I know where it's at on the dial. So row counter reads 80. That means we have our 40 rows for our initial gauge swatch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do, I don't know, 5 or 6 rows regular ribbing, and then I'm going to try my next tension. Now, so this is a gauge swatch that I've already done, and I marked the front or the main bed with an extra. So that's this tension, and then we go to this tension. This was a full number difference between the two beds, and it's off by quite a bit. And it's harder to see, but this is just 1 click larger. So we're going to try that next. So I've set it 1 click larger. So remember, the first section is with the 2 beds set to the same. And then this bed, this section is going to be with it set 1 click larger. And I'm not going to, well, do I care about rows for this part? I mean, I'm actually more concerned with the stitches per inch than the rows per inch. I'm thinking I don't really have to do a full rows. Yeah, let's just do 20. I'm going to do 20. So this is 1 click larger, and we're doing 20 rows. Yep. So 20 rows means row counter is going to read 40. It doesn't feel like it zigzagged in between. What did I screw up? Okay, I'm going to stop here and put my little stitch markers in. And then shove this down and out of the way. So over here. Another 10 rows. Okay, so that's 20 rows. And put everything back to normal. And then I should, no, see, that's what I mean about, I should just take this carriage apart again and see if I can correct that. Okay, so this should be a zigzag row. Is it? Oh, yes, it is. Okay, and I'm going to go up. I'm going to increase the size on the ribbon bed one more click. And this is going to be my last test. So back to 0 on my counter, and I'm going to do the same as I did the last time. I'm going to do 10 rows, so 20 on my row counter, put in a stitch marker on both beds, and then 10 more rows. So here we go. I didn't set the carriage. So we only have 9 rows this time because I messed up on the carriage settings. Big shocker. Okay, thread markers again. On needle 21 on all 4 sides. I definitely don't think this is going to be the correct setting because I don't know if you heard the little pop noise when I did the main bed needle, but that was the thread or the yarn going over the needle latch, and you don't hear that on the river side, which leads me to believe that the river side is quite a bit looser than the knit bed side. Shove these down out of the way. So this is going to be my last setting that I test. So that's 10 rows. Yeah, good enough. Okay. And I push that in crooked again. So I'm gonna do, I don't know, maybe 10 rows of ribbing here just to finish off. Okay, take the yarn out of the, actually, let's just cut it. Problem with the way that knitting machines are set up is you kind of you don't have any place to set things except your lap, like, or behind the knitting machine. It's kind of an awkward, anyway. Just gonna take the weights off. Okay, I've cut my yarn. Now, as I knit the next not past, I'm going to just hold the comb down a little bit so that the stitches knit cleanly off. Okay. So here is my gauge swatch. You can see my ribbing, full needle rib in between. And it came off the machine in this direction. So I really should mark this side somehow so that I know that's the main bed that knit that. Okay. Damn it. I really hate dropping weights on my flooring. I went a lot of years with painted plywood as my flooring, and it's only been a little over a year that I've actually had decent flooring. So I really don't like it when that happens. So wait a minute here. Yeah, which side was which? Good one, Vanessa. Well, I'm pretty sure this was the river side. So, this is the knit side. Anyway. Next time maybe I'll be smart and do that before I take it off the machine. Okay. Now, ideally, before I do any measuring, I would let this relax or even wash it and dry it as I would the finished item. So we'll come back when it's time to measure. All right. So, I forgot to hit the record button. And anyways, so you don't have to sit and watch me count stitches because I already did it off camera. So I'm just going to explain. If I had the green ruler, which is used for the standard gauge machine, which I do have it, I just don't know where. What I would do is I would take that green ruler and I would start it on the first stitch just inside of my colored yarn, my stitch marker, okay? And I would go to the last stitch just inside of my marker. And whatever number that was at, that would be my number of stitches per inch, okay? And then I would take my row counter and I would count, I would start it at the beginning of my 40 row swatch, which if you remember, I did full rib and full rib in between instead of a colored stitch. So it might not be noticeable on camera, but in person you can see that. And it would tell me how many rows I had per inch, okay? I don't have that, so I had to do kind of the old-fashioned method, And I didn't especially worry about rows. I worried about stitches. So when I counted on the ribber side, where I had the knob set just one click higher than the main bed for the ribber carriage, I got 35 stitches over 4 inches. Okay. And when I counted up here, where I had set it 2 clicks higher, I got 34 stitches. So moving in the wrong direction, because on the side for my knit bed, I got 36 stitches over 4 inches. So that leads me to think that maybe I have the rarity of a ribber carriage and a knitter carriage that are aligned in their tensions, and that I should actually have both of them set to the same tension. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to do another swatch where both carriages are actually set the same. I'm going to wash it, I'm going to dry it, do all that, and then I'll come back on camera and we will check it and see if that is the case. Okay, so now we have a somewhat wrinkled swatch where both beds were set to the same tension. So this is the knit carriage side, and I know this because I put an extra marker there. So I'm going to start on riverbed. So I'm going to pencil. So okay. So that gets me 36 stitches per 4 inches on the ribber side. And I'm just going to confirm that it's the same on the knit bed side. And 36 stitches on the knit bed side. So that means that these two carriages are actually, I don't know, there's a word I'm looking for, but it just means that I set the tension gauge to the same, or the stitch size gate dial to the same setting for both beds when I'm knitting circular or tubular to get equal tension on both beds. So anyways, now that that's done, I will know on this machine moving forward, no matter which yarn I'm using and what tension that specific yarn is at, as long as both beds are set to the same position on their dials, I will have equal tension. So probably a good test for anyone that wants to do tubular or circular knitting to undertake beforehand, and then that way you have that information. Anyways, that's this episode, and next up will be knitting socks. again, because why not?